My name's Kat. I'm one of the PGY4s and one of the execs slash chiefs. And we also have Connor, who's one of the PGY3s, and he's part of the resident wellness committee. So we'll be going through this presentation together. So Connor's going to go ahead and get us started.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Kat, for the introduction. Very excited that you all are here. This is really cool, and getting to share our program with y'all is always something that's really exciting. We have a few slides to get through and not too much time, so I'm just going to see if I can hit some of the highlights. These are our amazing program directors as well as our program administrator. You'll be working with all four of them very closely if you come here. They're all very excellent people. Next slide, Kat. And then we have our chief and executive residents on the left, including Kat herself, Megan and Jordan as well. And then on the right, the recruitment wellness and recruitment and wellness committee co-chairs, including myself, Jen Pham and Kimia Zarabian. Will be people that you kind of interact with throughout this process if you apply to UW, hopefully when you apply to UW, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. Go ahead, next slide. Quick facts. So we're a pretty large program. We have 30 residents total, 3 categorical interns, and then the remaining 3 classes in between PGY2 and PGY4 have 2 classes of 8 residents and then 1 class of 11. So for instance, Kat has 8 residents in her cohort. I have 11 in mine. And that just kind of is how things have been for a little while at this point. Combination of MDs and DOs, 4 different hospitals that I'll outline a little bit later. And then, yeah, moonlighting is allowed as an R3 and R4. We have a union and then 20 pretty flexible vacation days, which is always a nice perk. Next slide. Top reasons to apply to UW PM&R. I personally think that there's a lot of them. Obviously, I'm biased, but a couple of the things that I'd like to kind of hit home on. We get some really excellent diversity in terms of our cases. UW is one of the biggest and most prominent rehab centers kind of in the Northwestern United States. So we'll see people who are from Alaska. We'll see people from Montana, Idaho, Oregon, even Wyoming from time to time. Not only is that, do you get some diversity with who you're seeing in terms of where they're coming from, but you also get good diversity of rehab cases, right? So everything from trauma cases to medically complex cases, um, spinal cord injury specific care, outpatient medicine, procedures, stuff like that. It's all very, very useful in terms of getting you exposure that you need to become a rehab medicine physician, but also helping you figure out, hey, if I want to specialize in something, what is it that I want to go into and how can I get some exposure to that? The other thing is the faculty that we have. In my personal opinion, we have some really amazing faculty members that I have really, really enjoyed learning alongside, that have always treated all of us with a lot of respect, and are very learning oriented and teaching oriented. So I think that those are 2 of the biggest reasons to come to UW, along with all of these other things. And living in Seattle is great. I'm also going to touch on that a little bit more on our wellness slide. Next slide, Kat. Hidden gems of UW PM&R. One of the nice things is the first bullet point. So no admissions after 3 p.m. on weekdays. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the right side of the screen, where typical inpatient day is from 7:30 to 5 p.m. Similar, and then, on the outpatient days, it's more so like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the nice things about rehab residency in general, but also specifically here at UW, is you're able to have a life outside of medicine. So while days can be busy depending on which hospital you're at, which rotation you're on, there are safeguards that we have in order to kind of make sure that you are able to get out at a reasonable hour and take care of the things that are non-work related that you need to take care of. Other things, yeah, it mentions like limited weekend admissions. Every once in a while, if you're on weekend rounding or weekend call, you might have 1 admission. This is something that's relatively new and fairly infrequent. And if it happens, then it's pretty straightforward. I've done one of them myself. Other things, yeah, flexible vacations. I think that that's really, really important. I was able to attend a couple of my best friends' weddings and bachelor parties, among other things, this past year, in part because of how flexible vacation is, which is always a perk. And then, yeah, especially most holidays off and most weekends free. which is always, one of the things that you want to consider when it comes to like, hey, when am I going to be able to see family, friends, take vacations, stuff like that. Next slide, Kat. Core training sites. I think that this is a slide that's worth spending a little bit of time on. So 4 core training sites. One is Harborview Medical Center. That's the big trauma center associated with UW. Inpatient and outpatient rotations there. But as a PGY2, when you first come, most of your schedule will be inpatient, and then you kind of gradually move towards more outpatient stuff as residency progresses. Harborview, you'll see a lot of trauma, as I mentioned. So traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, a good amount of strokes. That'll pretty much be most of your bread and butter there, with occasionally like something else that's a little bit more kind of rare or unique. As compared to a little bit lower on the list, University of Washington Medical Center, that's more of the medically complex rehab. So that's where you'll see folks who have who are getting rehab for things like recent transplant, either a lung transplant, heart transplant, et cetera, and rehabbing after that procedure, cancer rehab, MS, ALS, et cetera, stuff like that. So a little bit more medically complex with your standard, strokes, spinal cord injuries occasionally kind of sprinkled in there as well. At the VA, you'll be working with veterans, obviously. At the VA, I think it's kind of cool. We have 2 different units. One is a general rehab unit where you'll see, again, mostly a combination of strokes, occasionally maybe like some myelopathy, but not as much spinal cord injuries, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Occasionally traumatic brain injury, and then stuff like Parkinson's is actually something that I've seen a decent amount on our general rehab unit at the VA. The second unit at the VA is a spinal cord injury specific unit, which is really cool. So for the entire time that you're there, you'll be taking care of folks with spinal cord injuries. Sometimes there are folks with spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries or a stroke or on, something like that. But everybody there will have an SCI. So you get some really cool like SCI specific training there with really excellent attendings. And then of course, the last one on our list, Seattle Children's, where you'll primarily be doing PEDS rehab. Next slide, Kat. So I talked about this a little bit already, primarily focusing on the inpatient rehab side of things, but we also have outpatient clinics and procedural stuff. So neuro rehab, sports and spine, pain. Our amputee program is something that I think is really cool, that gets you some really excellent exposure to amputee rehab. And that's actually another thing that you'll see frequently at the VA when you're on the inpatient side of things, as well as cancer rehab. That's kind of a growing field and subspecialty within the field of PM&R, that I think we get some really cool exposure to. And as far as procedures go, yeah, everything from spine injections. I'm actually in the pain clinic right now, kind of coming to you virtually. So occasionally working with anesthesia, but also a lot of, just PM&R docs doing spine injections, peripheral joint injections, backlift and bump, both interrogation and refills, and some other stuff like that. So pretty cool and diverse exposure to various parts of our specialty. Next slide. Didactics. So currently have didactics Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7:30 to 9:50. We are moving this to be once a week on Tuesdays from 7:30 to 11:50. Planning on making that switch in October of this year. The thought is that we are going to decrease the amount of time that people have to spend driving from site to site. Because didactics will usually be at one site, and then folks who have to travel to an inpatient or an outpatient rotation at a different site have to spend some time making that transition twice a week right now. So the idea is that we're going to be kind of cutting down on that travel time. They're protected didactics, so while you're here, you don't get paged, you don't get messages, or you might get messages, but you don't have to respond to them right away, and you have an attending physician covering for you. So it's like true didactic time where you get to appreciate these excellent lectures on topics ranging from MSK to neuro rehab, prosthetics, orthotics, ultrasound, etc. Yeah, and then they're longitudinal, and we do have a board review course kind of at the end of our program. Next slide, Kat. The fun stuff. This is where I come in as the one of the resident wellness committee members and the head of recruitment. I am a Spokane, Washington native, so I'm from Eastern Washington, and I have spent after high school most of my time in Western Washington. And I'm a big fan of my own state. I think that we have a lot of really, really fun things to do here. Not only do we have a lot of fun things to do here, but as a resident here, you have time to do them. Three national parks. I'm a really big outdoorsy person, and Mount Rainier National Park, North Cascades National Park, and Olympic National Park. They're all awesome, and I would highly recommend it if you guys come here for residency. Other things, concerts. Again, I come from Spokane, so like whenever any like name that people knew came into town, it's like, oh yeah, we should like go and see them. But in Seattle, there's like big names coming through town all the time. Most recently, The Weekend came, I think, 2 weekends ago, and then I think Morgan Wallen is coming this weekend. Other things, there's festivals, there's excellent food options. Sporting events. I'm a big sports guy as well. We have multiple different major league teams as well as UW for our college school or for a college program for sports. Yeah, it's just a really cool kind of hub for fun things to do in your free time that I would highly recommend. So, next slide, Kat. That's right. A couple other. Oh yeah, love the Tacoma Dome from Francesca. Yes, the Tacoma Dome is awesome. That's where a lot of folks occasionally concerts are there, I think. And then there's like high school sporting events for the state championships that happen there as well. Residents live everywhere. This is kind of just like a, hey, this is a map of Seattle. We live everywhere. I would say the most common places for folks to live, at least based on just where we're living right now, would be Green Lake and Greenwood. And Kat, I don't know if you can kind of circle where those places are on the map. So yeah,
Okay,
Green Lake,
Greenwood is here,
correct.
and then Green Lake is around here.
Mhm.
I would say
Yep.
Connor's class kind of lives more north, and then my class lives more like around here down
Mhm.
south.
Yep, South Lake Union, Capitol Hill, all are great spots to live. The one requirement is you have to live within 30 minutes of the hospitals just for call purposes. So if you do have to go in and you have to respond to something more urgently while you're on call, we want you to be within 30 minutes of the hospital. But that's generally pretty easy to do, and that you have a good amount of flexibility with where you live. Next slide. And I think this is the last one that I'm covering, but volunteering opportunities, other fun things to do in your free time that are not only meaningful, but can also boost your application for fellowships and or finding a job eventually after residency. Lots of sports coverage, which is great for me. I'm interested in sports, but also you don't have to be interested in sports to take advantage of this and have some fun. We have high school coverage, collegiate coverage. Seattle Marathon is something that a lot of us did last year that was really fun. Special Olympics and other local events. And then there's also just like, this mentions Outdoors for All, Camp Quarry, Seattle Adaptive Sports. I find that especially in a place like Seattle, you don't have to look too hard to find opportunities to volunteer with a program that is meaningful for you and that can be like a fun thing to do in your free time. So yet another perk of coming to UW for residency. Next slide. And here are some awesome pictures of our current and a few former residents, if I remember correctly.
And then this is a,
Yeah, now
what's that
former
animal
residents.
called,
Oh
Connor?
yeah, that's a marmot.
Yeah,
If
that
you
right
are
there.
able to make it over to North Cascades National Park or Olympic National Park or Mount Rainier, you will inevitably see some of those cute little guys, and you'll probably hear them too. They like let out a very high pitch whistle when they're either startled or just like hanging out. So yeah, they're a fun thing to see on like a hike.
Okay.
Right, and I will turn it over to you, Kat.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off by talking about leadership opportunities. So we have a few opportunities within our residency program for leadership. So like you have like your executive residents, chief residents, and then we have our resident wellness committee, which is what Connor's on. We also have a QI committee. So it's typically two residents who end up running the QI curriculum for the rest of the residents. We also have our equity, diversity, and inclusion committee. And then a lot of our residents participate in national committees. So whether that's like on AAP, FIT for AAP PM&R, on ACGME, AAMC, and like the sports med committee. And we're able to support residents going through that. We do have a few residency tracks. So our medical education track is one of our newer tracks. I believe it started this past year. And it's basically monthly workshops with faculty. And then you also have an education project. So we have a couple of our residents who did lectures for our new PGY2s for their Intro to PM&R course, and that was part of their education project. We also have a research track, and this is tailored to each resident. So will be on their outpatient rotations. They'll have like a half day of research every week. Um, in addition to this, that isn't specific to our residency track, but we also support residents through RMSTP, which is a research track through AAP. And then we also have an ultrasound track that was started by two of our alumni who basically put together an entire curriculum. They set up basically like workshops, like scanning workshops. This is like after work about every like few weeks or so. And then they have checkoffs for the residents where they'll sign off on it. And then at the end, you'll end up getting a certificate for this.
5 minutes left, and then I can give you another 2-minute warning.
We have a bunch of fellowships at UW. We have limb loss, brain injury, peds rehab, QI, SCI, MS, sports med, cancer rehab, pain medicine, or interventional pain. We also have a rehab research. We have palliative care that some of our we have a PM&R attending who just did the palliative care fellowship, neuromuscular, clinical informatics, and then we also have other fellowships local in the area. And then these are our recent grads. So they just graduated in 2025. So we have a mix of 2 limb loss, 1 sports, 1 spine and sports, a peds rehab, an SCI, and a resident, Nathan, who was a pediatrician before, and then he did another residency and is working in pediatric rehab down at UCLA. And then the class before was a very pain-heavy class. We had 5 residents out of the 11 go into pain. And then we had another resident go into sports, and then sports and spine, SCI, TBI, and then 1 resident went into gen rehab at American Lake, which is our counterpart VA in Washington. The some of our faculty, so we have Dr. Freely, who's our chair. She's the current editor-in-chief of PM&R, which is the Purple Journal. Dr. Esselman, previous chair and was a past president of AAPM&R. Dr. Burns, he's our service line chief of SCI at the VA, and he helped to develop the E-INSCI. Dr. Krayback is a current team physician for USA Swimming. Dr. Heron was a prior team physician for the Seattle Seahawks, and then Dr. Bhatti is the current team physician for the Seahawks. And then some retired faculty, Dr. Weinstein and Dr. Masagli, and they were involved with like AAPM&R and ABPM&R. And then this is some information. So we have an Instagram. We actually have a couple of Instagrams. So we have UW PM&R, and then we have UW PM&R Pets, where we post the pets in the program. Our program website is pmnrresidency.uw.edu. And then this is information for the 3 exec/chiefs. So these are email addresses, so you guys can email us whenever. And then UW has their own like GME perspective residents and fellows website. So that's linked here. And then we are also part of a union. So we were a part of a different union, and then we joined CIR, which is like a really big union. So we are currently in contract negotiations. So yeah. And then that's pretty much it. More pictures of us. This was at our summer retreat last year. This is a PGY2's holiday party. Some of our they're now graduated. This was class of 2025. This is when we did a end of the year thank you lunch at the VA where we all went off site and then we had lunch together. And this was like rehab care services and spinal cord injury. And then this was when my class initially came here. This was during our orientation, so a few years back. But yeah, what questions do you guys have, if any?
Feel free to drop questions in the chat or raise your hand if you have any. Addison asked, have there been any international medical graduates in your program? If yes, what qualities or experiences helped them succeed at UW?
I don't know if we've had any recently, but I believe Dr. Sarah Smith is an international grad. I want to say she was like in Ireland or something like that. And she's one of our newer attendings. And then I want to say Dr. Brian Cervani was also an international grad, and he was, I believe, a chief when I was an intern. Um, I'm not entirely sure like if there are specific qualities, but I will say like in terms of our like whole application process, like we look at every single application that gets sent to UW, and your application is looked at by multiple attendings. They basically kind of like split the application into a variety, like personal statement, letters of rec, CV, things like that, and then you have multiple attendings look at like each part of it. So even if like you are an international grad, if you like have like you repeated a year, like had a like board, like you didn't pass boards like one time, like we will still look at your application. And like we have like matched people who didn't pass boards, like we have matched international grads, like we match DOs. So like if you're interested in the UW, like I would just send your application because we will look at it.
And I think Campbell in the chat asked, do you get to cover all of the University of Washington varsity teams or other local universities in the area?
I will let Connor answer this one because I don't know
Yeah,
anything.
I can tell a little bit more about that. I kind of wish that we were able to cover the like UW sports teams themselves. That isn't one of the things that we do frequently. The most common things that we do for sports coverage are UW club team coverage. So club rugby is one of the things that we frequently do in addition to local high school coverage. And then there's also the big events that we do coverage for. So the Seattle Marathon, judo tournaments are another thing that like a lot of folks do. I would say that those are kind of the biggest things that our program covers, at least. Having said that, if you were interested in like reaching out to other providers in the area and seeing what other sports coverage you could do, that would be another potential option. And I forget, it might be Virginia Mason or maybe Swedish that does coverage for UW games. I'd have to double check that, but it's not us.
I think someone's hand was raised. I think it was Gabe, and Gabe posted in the chat. Do any of your residents ever match into non-traditional fellowships like neuropsychiatry or movement disorders?
Um, I don't think we've had that interest in like the past few years. I could totally see our residency program like supporting anyone who would want to do that. And we also have some elective time. So if you needed to do like an audition or an elective, then we could help plan out your schedule so that we could accommodate that. Um, but yeah, for the most part, like we are pretty successful of like getting residents into fellowship of like the fellowship of their choice and like whatever discipline. So I think that they'd be able to, we could support that.
And piggybacking off of that, it looks like one of the other messages that I saw was from Amelia. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. But something about mentorship programs for pursuing fellowships. One of the nice things about UW is that we have attendings who pretty much, there's pretty much one attending that's gone down, at least one attending that's gone down every fellowship route. So regardless of whether you're interested in brain, stroke rehab, SCI, sports, cancer rehab, amputee medicine, etc., expressing any kind of interest in that usually results in an email or some kind of connection being sent to an attending who is specialized in that subspecialty. And I will say, at least based on my experience, my personal experience with my sports medicine mentors and the experiences that I've heard from other people who are interested in spinal cord injury or brain injury, the mentorship that we get from the faculty members here is really excellent in terms of both preparing your application and also just saying like, hey, let's get you some exposure and make sure that this is for you and make sure that you're like, that this is what you want to commit to for a fellowship application. So I'd say that we have very strong fellowship mentorship programs in pretty much every common subspecialty of PM&R.
And
And I would say, oh,
oh,
sorry.
sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just to piggyback off that, we have like formal mentorship where like pretty much when people come to UW, they express some like interest in some field, and then you get paired with the mentor where you check in with them like formally yearly, but like kind of throughout the year they'll check in on you. And then there's a lot of informal mentorship, like Connor was saying, like as you go through your rotations, like all of our attendings are very approachable and like everything's like a very casual vibe. So it's very easy to pick up like informal mentors.
So we have a minute left, so I think we might have time for one more question. Jessica's question, how much face time do you get with leadership and are they receptive to resident input?
You get as much face time as you want, I would say. Like at baseline, you will get a program director session like every month with Dr. Hodap. All of our PDs are very approachable. Like you can just text them and they'll talk to you. You can call them, very reachable, very open. In terms of like receptive to resident input, I would say like they are very receptive to things. We have a bunch of like QI projects that are going on right now because a resident found something that they didn't like per se or like was challenging, and then we basically turn it into a QI project and then something changes. Like the whole didactics changing from 2 days a week to 1 day a week, like that was based off of resident feedback. I will say just like with any academic institution, like it just takes kind of like time for changes to be made, but they're very open to making changes and will like help you in terms of like things that you want to change. And if they can't help you with it, they will connect you with someone who can.
And the last thing that I'll end with right before we kind of finish this presentation is another concrete example of how program leadership has kind of helped or changed in response to feedback is one of the more busy and rigorous rotations here is our brain consults rotation at Harborview. As you can imagine, it's a trauma center. You see a lot of traumatic brain injuries, among other things. And the feedback was, hey, this is like pretty intense and can be a pretty rigorous rotation. And like as of, I think a couple of months ago, the faculty members have already collectively put together a program or a way to have another attending on board so that you're able to kind of divvy up the consults more evenly so that you have more time for actually like processing what you're doing and kind of better getting some learning experience out of the rotation. So I think there's concrete evidence that I have seen over even just the last year that shows that program directors and other folks actually do listen to your feedback and make concrete changes in response to it, which I think is really cool.
Thank you both so much for this presentation.